Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be talking about those most recently released and the final wave of Mario Kart 8. Now, I do apologise, my voice is very croaky, I got a bit of a cold coming on, so just bear with me. But we recently had that Wave 6 come out, and I gotta say, it was a pretty solid wave. Right now, I'm not sure if it's my favourite, but all in all, let's talk about the tracks. Let's crack on then. Let's talk about Rome Avanti. This is a tour track. This is the one that starts it off. And this track is not bad. I think it's got a nice look to it. But the only downside to this track is that it kind of just feels like it's muddled in with a lot of the other tour tracks. There's nothing about this track that stands out particularly. A lot of the track is also focused around this central sort of roundabout that you fire off in different directions. There is a Colosseum with chain jumps in it, which is probably the highlight. And that's kind of fun. But as tracks go, it's not bad, it's not good, it's very average. It's fun. I can't take away from driving around that. It's fun, but there is nothing defining about this track. This goes next to London Loop, this goes next to Berlin Byways, and some of those other tour tracks that just kind of blend into one for me, unfortunately. I do enjoy it. I'm not going to say that I hate it. There's nothing about it. It's not like Los Angeles Laps kind of level of track that I dislike, but it's got good music, it's a nice drive, but it's a fairly standard kind of track. You know, like I said, nothing crazy popping out of it. Now, moving on, we get DK Mountain. There's a track that's near and dear to my heart. I honestly did not see this one come back. I wanted this track to come back. I really did. Didn't see it coming back, and it's finally here. Now, this is a perfect example of Nintendo simplifying, or dumbifying as I like to call it, some of the tracks in the game. DK Mountain is notoriously quite a tough track because of the S-bends that you have sort of near the end of the track. So you start off, you go up the mountain, you shoot through the cannon, you bounce down part of the mountain, and then you get to these big, long sort of U-bends, essentially. Now, in this version, you still have the rocks. They seem less effective getting in the way. Like, there's like 2 rocks, maybe 3 rocks, but they never seem to get in the way. So that's a bit easier. But the track has been widened so much that some of the difficulty has been taken out. Now, it's still possible to fall off the track. Not in all the same places, and where the big crack is in the middle when you go to the middle S-bend. It's a lot harder to fall down. It's a much narrower thing. And I think, as much as I love this track still, and I really do, I think Nintendo have unfortunately made this track a bit too easy, because this track was always chaotic for having those crazy bends and like putting down bananas and knocking people off the track and trying to learn it's a good track to learn how to drift on well, right? Now it's fun to see it back. It's a massive glow up. The music's still really good, and I'm really glad it's here. But the part where you come from the top of the mountain down, that feels a lot like more barren. Essentially, when you get to those turns, they're a lot easier to deal with. But all in all, like, I am glad it's back. I just don't think it's quite the same level of which it was. Even the bridge at the end is kind of interesting. They made it so you can get like a jump off of it. It sort of wobbles on its own rather than like in the original, depending on how you drove on it, it would kind of wobble anyway. And that was where you'd slap down bananas as well and send people off the track. It's one of those tracks that was always really fun and chaotic because it was tough, because you could put like bananas down and other things in certain places to deal with it. But I will say it's still great to see it back here. This is a really good pick and put into this booster pass. It's just a shame that it's been simplified a bit. That's really taken out some of that challenge. But, you know, that's the kind of the way it's been with this booster pass. Moving on from that, we have Daisy Circuit. A track that I kind of remember, but it's an interesting choice because this track doesn't stand out for anything. Like, it's got its own kind of like, you know, figure of 8 like roundabouts. It's got these big turns and stuff. This track just feels a bit too easy. I think this track should have been brought in like 2 waves ago, and replaced with something a little bit on the more difficult side, because at least with DK Mountain, it's a bit of a difficult track. Rome Avanti definitely has some tight turns. we're in like, you know, wave 6. We should be getting some of the harder tracks, and we do get a couple of those. But Daisy Circuit, like, I don't dislike it, but it's one of those ones, it's very forgettable, I think. The music's quite nice on it, but the track itself it just feels oddly placed in this pack. I don't think it should have been in this pack. I think it should have been in one of the earlier ones. But I don't have much to say other than I like it. I do like it, but how memorable it is, it's going to probably depend on your nostalgia, to be honest. And there might have possibly been other Wii tracks that they could have picked. I'm not sure without looking at them, but I'm kind of glad it's here. I just think it's maybe you switch this with something else earlier on in the pack to have a bit more of a consistently more tougher tracks in this wave. All right, moving on from that, then and the final one of this particular 4 tracks was Piranha Plant Cove, which is from Tour. I actually quite like this track. I will agree with a friend of mine being like, there's not enough obstacles, and I'm like, yeah, that's true, but the actual track itself is very varied. You've got thwomps, you've got eels, you've got some tight turns. In some places it definitely feels a bit bland, but it is kind of fun doing this underwater track for the most part. It's just one of those tracks that I'm like, I enjoy playing on it because it just feels fun to race on. The theme and the music are pretty decent, but yes, it's one of those tracks that probably could have used a few more obstacles in its way. I know they've tried to change up each of the laps to feel quite different, but regardless, I think like you could have done more with the eel, perhaps. Maybe one more thwomp on the track somewhere. But it's in terms of the new tracks that I quote unquote new tracks that got put into this game, it's one of the better ones. I think Ninja Hideaway is still the best one of them, but this is decent enough. So moving on, then we have Madrid Drive. I actually really like Madrid Drive. I think this is a really good tour track. This has a lot going for it. You have the marketplace, you have the museum, you have this random wiggler. That is a bit random, but there's random wiggler in like a cafe area. You have the football stadium, which is really probably the most memorable part of it, watching Goomba Shoes kick these footballs back and forth. This is kind of the quality that I'd expect from tour tracks. Like this one, Sydney Sprint, possibly some of the others. I'd have to like look at a list of them. But this one is like, yes, this is what the tour tracks should be. They should be interesting. I should be going to these different locales based on the city. Oh, here's a museum. Oh, here's a marketplace. Here's a football stadium. Like, that makes these tracks far more interesting. It's not like Los Angeles Laps, which is like beach, oil field, and like nothing else. And that track's just really boring. You know, like Sydney Sprint, another one where you have like the boat and the Sydney Opera House and the train track part of it. I think it's a train or a bridge part of it. Like, there should be these memorable, iconic parts of the tracks on different laps, and I think this track does this really well, if not the best. Because it's like, okay, this is the part of the track with this in it. This is, even if the track itself isn't necessarily, it's just a big turn, you can be like, oh, this is fun. It's a different kind of background. It's a different kind of backdrop as I'm going along. So there's that. So that track is really solid. Next up we have Rosalina Ice World, and I will say this is a good choice because this track is tough, and this track actually has one thing that I wish DK Mountain had, which is near the beginning of this track, you have this big long turn with this like massive cracked part of the track. It's very easy to fall off, which is what DK Mountain should have been, but they kind of made it a bit too easy. But it's really cool to see this track back. It's got some interesting turns in it. I think this is a more of a difficult pick. I'm really glad to see it. I will say there are tracks from the 3DS game, like other ones, maybe I would have put above this, but this is definitely a track that I'm happy to say, like, oh, cool, yeah, like this feels more difficult. This feels like a sort of track you'd find in like a final cup. I think people are going to struggle with it, and there's cool things about it. Like, you have the ability to get onto the ice, you can go under the water. That changes on the lap because it kind of like falls apart. It's got some tight turns at the end. You've got boost pads on one side, items on the other. Like, I just think this is a really good track. It's one of the ones from the 3DS that was in the final cup, I believe, and I think this is the perfect placement for it. And I think this is just a really solid, fun track with enough obstacles in it, enough tight turns to make it feel like, okay, I need to learn this track. I need to understand like when to drift and things like that. And I think it does a good job of that. And I think that's what I personally wanted from like these later waves is, hey, here is a track that is on the more difficult side, let's say. So I haven't got anything bad to say about this track. Yes, you could have picked other 3DS tracks, fine, whatever, but this one is at least on the tougher side. Then we have Bowser's Castle 3, the SNES version. This is a glow-up this is the tour version that is a glow-up of the original. This is probably my favourite in the past. The music is phenomenal. They did a really good job of that. This track goes to show that you don't need a track to be super duper long. You don't have to have super duper gimmicks, but what you do need is variety, and this track has it. You have basically anti-grav. You're going up hills, you're going down hills, you can get on top of the walls, you've got thwomps. This is a really good rendition of a classic SNES track. And I know people were crapping on Mario Circuit Free and being like, oh, they don't get any love, like, you know, like the Game Boy Advance tracks do. And I'm like, well, there you go. That'll shut people up, won't it? Because this track is phenomenal. This is such a fun track. It's very fast. There's a lot to think about. Lots of fun turns. Lots of like paths to take through this track. And it is longer than the original. They extended the end part of it, but I'm just so glad to see a Bowser's Castle from the SNES game get into this, because like we've been lacking a lot of the SNES tracks. Like, say people can say what they want about those old tracks. They are the classic tracks, and Bowser's Castle and Ghost Valley, and obviously Rainbow Road was already in the game, but things like that, they deserve to be here because they are phenomenal tracks, and this proves that. This is possibly the best track I could see. That is my favourite track in this pack. And I love it. I think the theming and the look and everything about it feels very metal, very Bowser. So it's very, I love the design, love the track. I think it's fast, it's fun, it's chaotic. That's what you want in you know. It's not the toughest Bowser Castle, but it's still, there's plenty of ways to mess people over in it. And then lastly, we have Rainbow Road from the Wii, and this is a good choice. I'm glad that we ended up with another Rainbow Road. It's not the Rainbow Road I would have picked. I would have picked the GameCube version, because that one's a bit more difficult, but this is still a good, solid Rainbow Road. There's a lot of boost pads, there's like twists and turns. It's got a big jump. Like this one is a lot of fun to play on. I really like this track. And it's awesome to see that we've got the SNES Rainbow Road, we've got the Wii Rainbow Road, we've got Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road, we've got the 3DS Rainbow Road. I would have loved to seen all of the Rainbow Roads in this game, and I would still love Nintendo to just do a Rainbow Road Cup. You know, just play through all the hardest tracks. But this track's just fun. It looks awesome. It's fun. It's hard to hate on, like, you know, on Rainbow Roads, because they are some of the most iconic Mario Kart tracks in terms of look. All of the Rainbow Roads in this game look really good. Oh, I forgot we have the N64 Rainbow Road in this game as well. You know, when you look at each one, they all have these beautiful designs. They are on the harder side. There are no railings. It's easy to fall off. Like, all of that stuff is fantastic. Like, and I really like this choice. This track looks amazing. And overall, this really seals the package for me. I think this is one of the better waves. I don't know if it's my favourite wave, but having these two cups, having pretty consistent tracks. I mean, the worst track in these two cups is probably Daisy Circuit, and that's not saying the track's bad. That's just saying, hey, it's probably the weakest one here. You know, and that's saying with the tour tracks actually being decent. So, yeah, overall, I'm actually pretty happy with the track selection we got here. You know, as a final cup, and knowing that they were kind of 50-50 a lot of the time, this is pretty solid. I am very happy with the track selection. Obviously there's tracks I would have loved to see in this pass, but that is a conversation for another day. This is just to tell you that Wave 6 is a solid wave. There are good tracks here. There are some harder tracks here, and I hope that people really appreciate the fact that there are harder tracks. All in all, very happy with Wave 6. We'll be playing a lot more of it. Going forward, expect more Mario Kart videos, because I have a lot of things I want to talk about with this booster pass. So thank you very much for watching, because that will do it for me today. I hope these initial impressions of these tracks are good to you guys. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.